Hey guys, okay, so my first recording of this was 20 minutes. I'm going to try to get it down to 10 for you. Whew, all right, so let's talk real quick about what Europe looks like following the Renaissance and Reformation. I got a lot of questions about, are the wars ever going to end? Can you go into more details on that? Or what does this mean now for Europe? So I'm going to try very quickly to answer some of those questions. And it may get a little choppy. So I do apologize for that because usually I don't really go into this a whole lot. We kind of just have to keep moving, but I figure there's really no bound, there's a lot going on this year. So let's make some connections. Okay, so I wanted to show you this map first off so that you kind of know what Europe looks like in the 1500s and how it will kind of look this way for a while. As you can see, not a whole lot changes between 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s. All right. Except you have a couple things going on here, but we're not going about that. All right. Anyways, so let's talk a little bit about at the end of the Reformation, what happens. So let's go back to 1572, which we did talk about very, very briefly in one of the little lectures. But you have in France a civil war breakout. One of the things that we talked about was how thousands of Protestants will be murdered in France in 1572. I touched on this very briefly, but just to give you an idea. So there is this big division in France between Catholics and Protestants, or the Huguenots. And this is going to increase until 1572 when this group of nobles is completely assassinated because they were Protestants or they were Catholics. So thousands of Huguenots in Paris are going to be murdered in what becomes known as the St. Bartholomew Day Massacre in 1572, and this will spread out throughout France. So France is very Catholic, and they look to the Catholic Church for guidance. Well, after 1572, you have people really trying to squash down, and like Huguenots will flee, and so some of the violence ends not because of any big event, or not because of any one person, because people start fleeing the area. The influence of Queen Elizabeth from England is felt in France. And if you remember in England, hopefully you remember that Queen Elizabeth, she made a compromise between Protestants and Catholics and brought the religions together, kind of. Excuse me. Essentially, Queen Elizabeth was a Protestant. She had a Catholic country for the most part and decided to compromise, come up with the Anglican Church, basically the basis for the Episcopal Church today. And in doing so, she said, we're a Protestant nation, but you can be Catholic as long as you're faithful. So in 1598, the French King Henry, not the English king, the French King Henry follows that role as well. And he says, all right, I'll allow Protestantism in France as long as you're loyal to the throne. Okay, so that's a big one. Monarchs themselves are going to have to find a way to get out of this continuous cycle of warfare between Protestants and Catholics, because without direction, Protestants and Catholics would go after each other. And so monarchs have to get out of that. So they're going to look to political methods like unifying people under law instead of religion. 1500s, 1600s, you're going to see this like century-long struggle over religion. Some changes will happen. So you're going to have new ideas about human spirituality. As people follow new religious ideas, they're going to create religious communities. You have families broken apart over religious communities. Monarchs will begin to gain power. They're going to consolidate that power. So a lot of these nations will stop sending money to the church directly from taxes, and they'll keep that money. And then on top of all of that, they'll raise taxes so they can get more powerful. They'll start to build new roads. They will start to explore, and they need funding for all of that. A big part of exploring was power, money, land, and also religion. Religion was a big one that helps people spread out. So they're going to need to raise taxes to explore and to gain weapons and to fight each other in naval battles. Spain itself is a country that gets extremely wealthy through exploration and then loses it all as it tries to enforce Catholicism within its nation and within its other areas it controls. And we'll get more into that as well. One of the things a couple of things I wanted to take away from the Protestant Reformation that will be very impactful to us are things like modern democracy, capitalism, individualism, civil rights. A lot of our modern day like values come from the Protestant Reformation and Protestants themselves. So like work hard, be honest, be kind. Like those are all things that come from the Protestant Reformation that actually helped form America as well. Additionally, the Protestant Reformation not only creates a split between church and state for many, it will also lead to that literacy, which gets people thinking and again inspires thinkers and philosophers, and you have this web of education to go forward. You do have at this time one of the most deadly and longest wars that we've seen in Europe, and that's called the 30 Years' War. 8 million will die during this time due to famine, disease, and battle. It goes from 1618 to 1648 and involves a lot of Central Europe, but that doesn't mean other countries aren't involved. Denmark's involved, England's involved, France, Spain, Portugal, Italian city-states. All of these areas are involved with what's going on. 30 Years' War starts off between Catholics and Protestants, and instead of it being about which religion will control or which religion is the best for all the people, it now becomes about power and control. And 30 Years' War changes the geopolitical face of Europe and the role of religion it plays in nation states and society. So at the end of the 30 Years' War, you have a treaty signed called the Peace of Westphalia. Spain will lose control of Portugal and the Dutch Republic, which is up here. You have the groundwork for the formation of modern nation states. So all of these little states in here that you can't really see, like all of these, will end up getting boundaries like drawn around them because of this, and it'll establish these fixed boundaries for all these countries that were fighting. And it also decided that citizens of these countries or these little nation states are subject to that specific country or nation state laws and not to like religious laws in general. Because that was the big thing about like, well, if like France was following its own set of laws, but very religious, then what did that mean on a larger scale? And now they're focusing at like, no, it's not about religious law, it's about a country's law. Now, if a country decided to use religious law, that was different, but it really focuses on what that country is going to do. This alters a balance of power. So now power goes to the monarchs and the government and not to the church. I can't stress enough to you how much of a shift this is. I mean, if you think about our current state in the United States, we still say, I pledge allegiance to the flag, you know, under God. We still have in God we trust on our money. We have a moment of silence, which is meant for prayer, but they can't say that technically. So religion still impacts our lives, and we are very much removed from this time period. But you have to remember that while we think today, like, why are people fighting? They're still Christians. Like, why are they fighting amongst one another? This was a huge shift. Okay. Religion was still extremely important and will be important for hundreds of years. I mean, it's still important today in how people interact and believe and all of those things. Wars are still fought today over different beliefs. But it shifts. This is when we start to see this big shift here, okay? Monarchs are really going to see this need to centralize and professionalize the government. Again, they're going to need money for weapons as they go out and explore. And as they're exploring and conquering new areas, they're going to need money for expansion there. They're going to need money for roads. They're going to need money for boats. As we get more trade happening, you're going to need money for that trade. So you are going to see this rise in taxes, and monarchs especially are not going to want to give their money to religious entities anymore. A lot of leaders are they're wanting to unite. You can't effectively rule people that are always fighting one another, right? And if they're fighting one another over religion, then you aren't the person they're looking to for guidance. And leaders are going to want, monarchs especially, are going to want you looking at them for guidance. So they are going to look at, how can I unify these people? And while religion was the way to unify people, when Protestantism starts fragmenting, like we saw, right? We have Lutheranism, Calvinism, Anabaptist, the Anglican Church. It's really hard to unify people when all these different branches keep popping up. And so that's when they're going to look at using law to unify and be like, you're a Frenchman, you're an Englishman. And we see that rise of nationalism occurring because people are unifying under country and not under God. And that is where we have this huge shift occurring. Okay. Sorry, I got to turn my timer off. Alrighty, got like a minute left on this. So again, as groups keep breaking up, it's impossible to unite under religion. So we're going to see that shift into uniting under laws. And as we get into our exploration unit, which is our next big unit, we're going to see how these countries here, like let me do this, like England, France, Spain, and Portugal, okay, how these countries were successful in uniting their people, some under religion, some under laws, how they're the main ones that really go out and conquer and will be the key players in exploration. And it's because they are successful in uniting their people, whether that be through, again, law or religion. But we're going to get more into that in the future. Over just a heads up, virtual kids, over the next couple class periods, I'm going to be taking you away from Europe, and I'm going to be putting you into other areas of the world. So we're going to look at like Latin America, Middle East, China, Japan, Africa, to see what's going on during this age of exploration, or between the 1400s and 1700s, very, very briefly. Big, brief overview, okay? Very, very brief. Because our next unit on exploration takes us to all of these different places, and I think it's really important that we take a time out and just see what was going on in these other areas before Europeans got there, okay? So please let me know if you have any questions over this material. Please let me know if I can do anything to help you. Hopefully this makes sense. Again, I don't have materials for this because I usually don't talk about it, but you guys virtually have really helped me out. Like, you've asked some wonderful questions, and I think it's really great. I almost feel like virtual platform are letting some of you guys feel freer to talk and like to give your feedback and to ask questions maybe you wouldn't ask in class. So I really want to say I appreciate you so much for like all of the questions you have, because it's made me be like, oh, let's take a look at this stuff. So anyways, thank you guys so much. And again, I hope I get to see all of your faces one day and be united and do fun stuff together in class. But again, let me know if you have any questions over this little topic today. And yeah, okay, that's all. Bye.